You don't stab the innocent and expect the universe to hand you peace. It hands you a mirror. That's the truth they never saw coming, and now it's too late. The mirror's up. The blood is on their hands. No filters, no excuses, just raw reality, and the universe is watching. They laughed while they tortured the guiltless. They danced in circles, mocking pain they caused, thinking no one would notice. But silence isn't a shield, it's evidence. And now that silence is screaming louder than any defense they could ever dream of. This isn't just betrayal, this is a spiritual hit job, and the universe is furious. They didn't just mess with a person, they struck at the soul of balance, and when dozens gather like vultures to rip apart one innocent heart, the scales don't just tip, they snap. This is where the reckoning begins. And before we go further, if this message is stirring something in you, if it feels like truth wrapped in fire, pay it forward. Hit that like button, subscribe, share this light. Because this isn't just content. It's a responsibility, a call, a truth that needs voices. And you're one of them. Now, let's talk. Welcome, the chosen ones. You didn't just stumble here. You were pulled, called even by something bigger. Because the universe doesn't gather witnesses for no reason. You've seen what they've done. You've felt the shift. You've watched good people, kind souls, pure-hearted humans be dragged through the mud by those who wear masks so well they forget they even put them on. This isn't some cosmic accident, it's war, spiritual war, and the battlefield isn't made of guns or blades, it's made of lies, manipulation, envy, and power games. They took an innocent, someone marked by truth, someone who chose light over popularity, someone who said no to the wrong, and they tried to break them, piece by piece. But here's the part they didn't count on. The universe remembers. Every tear, every scream swallowed in silence. Every night the innocent begged for peace, while the guilty threw parties in their honor. You see, this isn't just injustice, it's a crime against the balance of everything, and the universe doesn't let that slide. Think about it. When a wildfire burns too far, nature doesn't ask permission to reign. It just does. When a lion's cub is attacked, the pride doesn't hold court. It strikes. The same rule applies here. They thought numbers gave them power, that by gathering more voices, they could drown out the truth. That if enough people joined the lie, it would become law. But numbers don't cleanse sin, they multiply the fallout. And now, that fallout is here. We're not here to beg for justice, we're here to witness it. We're not hoping the universe sees, it already has. The files are open, the evidence is in. The emotional assassins, the manipulators, the soul hunters, they're already standing trial, not in a courtroom built by man, but in one crafted by universal law. And the verdict, it's already echoing. Consequence, loss, exposure, isolation. That's what awaits the ones who thought destroying a chosen one was sport. To the ones who think they've won, look again. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of your own unraveling. You planted pain and expected flowers. You sowed betrayal and thought you'd get blessings. The universe doesn't work like that. To those who stayed silent, your silence wasn't neutral. It was permission. And the universe is counting you in too. And to the chosen one, we see you. You were never weak. You were watched, protected, prepared. The fire wasn't to burn you. It was to reveal who you are. You didn't lose. You outlasted. This isn't revenge. This is balance. And it's happening now. So if you're hearing this and you know you're not like the rest, if you've been betrayed, lied on, hunted while innocent, know this, you're not forgotten, you're chosen. and while they may have danced on your name, the universe is preparing a table in front of every single one of them. So if your heart's pounding and something deep inside you is saying, "This message is mine," you're not imagining it. That's the pull of truth. That's the universe knocking. If you've ever been the one they tried to silence, the one they mocked, the one they crucified emotionally for simply existing in your truth, then stay. This isn't just a story. This is your reflection. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you feel the shift. It means you're ready to rise from the ashes they tried to bury you in. And now, let's peel this back, step by step. Don't blink. Number 1, they didn't just throw dirt on your name, they dug their own grave with it. When you bury the innocent, don't forget. The dirt you throw becomes your own suffocation. Let that marinate. They thought they were tossing lies into the wind, petty whispers, backroom gossip, little poison pills passed around like candy. But they didn't just lie on your name. No, they lied to the universe itself. They stood in front of the cosmic scale and spat falsehoods like they were truth, hoping that if enough mouths moved, reality would bend to match their fiction. But the universe doesn't work like that. The truth doesn't get overwritten by noise. It waits, patient, sharp, and merciless. And now it's roaring back like a wave, ready to drown the architects of this cruelty in their own deception. They weren't confused. This wasn't some misunderstanding. What they did was calculated. They looked at your light, your peace, your purpose, your soul, and they couldn't stand it. So they conspired, quietly at first, then louder, then boldly, then shamelessly. They teamed up, circled like wolves, and ripped into your character like it was sport. They told stories, twisted timelines, manipulated emotions, and presented you like a villain in a movie they wrote, and forced others to watch. They didn't just smear you, they attempted a spiritual assassination, and they thought they could walk away from that untouched. See, they thought the universe was sleeping. They thought silence meant approval, that the lack of lightning striking them down meant they got away with it. But judgment doesn't always arrive as thunder. Sometimes it shows up quietly, like rot in the foundation. And it's already begun. Look at their lives. Pay close attention. The ones who raised their voice against you without cause. The ones who twisted your truth into a weapon. They're not winning. They're unraveling. Slowly, quietly, publicly, behind fake smiles and empty wins. The guilt is gnawing. The blessings are drying. And they don't even know why. That's the cost of lying to the universe. You were the chosen one, marked not for comfort, but for confrontation. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to expose what others hide from. You became their target because your presence reminded them of what they gave up. Truth, decency, soul. They didn't just lie on you, they lied to the force that made you. They looked at a soul wrapped in innocence, drenched in pain, and pointed fingers. They turned your quiet suffering into their personal entertainment, never realizing the storm they were conjuring above their own heads. The universe is not a bystander. It's a witness. And every false word, every smirk shared behind your back, every harmless whisper was a signature on their own spiritual warrant. You wonder why it happened to you, why they picked you. Here's why: because you were never average, because your silence held more power than their noise, because even when they tried to drown you, something in you refused to die. Because you were a mirror, and when they looked at you, they saw everything they hated about themselves. So they tried to break it, But here's what they didn't know. Mirrors don't shatter easily when they reflect truth. They reflect harder. And now, every time they look around, they're seeing themselves more clearly, in lost peace, in anxious sleep, in the growing fear that what they did is finally coming back. Because it is. The scales are tipping. Slowly, maybe. But once the weight of truth gains momentum, it crashes like a tidal wave, and that wave is heading straight for them. Understand this. The universe doesn't forget. It doesn't move on just because time does. It holds receipts, and it never loses a single one. So to those who called your pain an act, your isolation a punishment, your strength arrogance, here's your reality check. You didn't exile the innocent. You exposed yourselves. You built false stories like sandcastles, and now the tide is rising. And to you, chosen one, let their betrayal be your breakthrough. Let their lies build your platform. Let their hate fuel your rising. Because if the whole world can lie on your name and you still wake up with a clean soul, you've already won. Their voices may have been louder, but yours is eternal. And the punishment for trying to destroy someone who was protected by the universe, it's not always fire and brimstone. Sometimes it's watching you thrive while they choke on the silence of being exposed. They thought they buried you in shame. What they didn't know is you were a seed, and now you're growing, so stand up taller. Walk in your pain like it's armor. Let your scars speak louder than their gossip. Because the ones who lied to the universe will soon realize it's not forgiveness they need, it's mercy, and even that might be too late. Let's keep going. Number 2. They didn't just mock you, they laughed at the universe's choice and asked for a curse. When people mock what they didn't build, they curse what they'll never receive. Let that hit. Let it sting, because that's exactly what they did. They didn't just envy you. No, envy would have been quiet. They didn't just dislike you. Dislike would have walked away. What they did was far worse. They mocked the selection process itself. They looked up at the sky, scoffed at the design, spit at the decision, and thought their opinion mattered more than cosmic order. Their real problem wasn't with you. It was with the choice made over your life, the assignment given to you, the unseen hand that lifted you while they stayed crawling in circles. You reminded them of what they weren't. You reminded them that favor has nothing to do with followers, applause, or appearance, and everything to do with alignment. You became the proof that the universe doesn't take votes. That's what burned them. Because how could you be chosen? That question poisoned their minds. That seed grew into rage. They convinced themselves they were better, more liked, more praised, more acceptable. And when the light still found you, when grace still covered you, they couldn't take it. So they turned your purpose into a target. They turned your calling into comedy. They joked about your pain, mocked your healing, laughed at your comeback, rolled their eyes when your name was mentioned. They couldn't stand the fact that no matter how many times they threw you off the path, you kept walking like you never fell. And the universe saw all of it. You see, they thought your role was open to debate, like the calling on your life was a group vote, a popularity contest, something they had a say in. But what they didn't understand is, you were never chosen by the crowd. You were chosen despite it. The moment you were picked, it offended their pride. It exposed their entitlement, because in their mind, they deserved it more. They'd done more, played nicer, followed the rules of the fake game. But the universe doesn't select based on ego. It selects based on essence, and yours burned through the fog of their performance. So they tried to override it. How? By attacking your assignment, by undermining your purpose, by slapping sarcasm on your sincerity and dragging your sacred through their sewage. They acted like their laughter could revoke your appointment, like their criticism could cancel what was never theirs to approve. Imagine the level of arrogance it takes to mock the decision of the universe, as if the same force that spins planets and aligns stars made a mistake by choosing you. But that's exactly what they did. They didn't mock your actions, they mocked your existence. They didn't just gossip, they protested the divine. And there's a price for that, because mocking what the universe has appointed is dangerous ground. You can't curse what you didn't create. You can't rip pages from a book you never wrote. And you definitely can't fire someone from an assignment you were never qualified to apply for. Let this be clear, your elevation wasn't a mistake. Your calling wasn't a glitch. You were chosen because your soul carries a blueprint that theirs doesn't. Because your wounds didn't make you bitter, they made you powerful. Because when you were left alone, you didn't collapse, you evolved. And every time they rolled their eyes at you, every time they whispered, "Who does she think she is?" or "Why him?" they weren't insulting you, they were indicting themselves. Because mocking your purpose is like laughing at the wind for moving without permission. It's like yelling at the rain for falling where it wants. It's foolish. You didn't volunteer to be chosen. You were summoned. And being summoned comes with consequences, not for you, but for the ones who try to block it. Because this isn't politics. This is destiny. And when you interfere with destiny, the universe doesn't correct. It removes. So if they're losing peace, losing connection, losing their fake power, don't be shocked. You don't spit at the sun and expect to walk away cool. You don't mock the blueprint and expect to live in the house. The weight of what they said may still sting. Maybe you're still carrying their words in the back of your mind, still haunted by how they laughed when you tried, how they mocked your process, how they acted like your tears were a performance. But let me remind you, laughter doesn't erase truth, noise doesn't cancel power, and jealousy never dethrones alignment. You are not their opinion. You are the universe's decision, and no matter how many times they try to repaint your worth, your essence will always outshine their lies. They wanted to make you a joke, but all they did was reveal themselves as clowns in a circus they created, dancing for attention, performing for validation, and choking on the truth that won't leave them alone. That's the power of being chosen. Your success becomes their silence. Your purpose becomes their punishment. Your survival becomes their reminder that they are not in control and never were. So when they laughed, when they mocked, when they questioned why you, remember this: they weren't questioning your worth. They were screaming at the sky, asking why it wasn't them. And the universe answered, loud and clear. Because while they were pretending, you were preparing. While they were mocking, you were molding. While they were plotting, you were becoming. You are the chosen one. Not because you're perfect, but because you're positioned. And no amount of sarcasm, bitterness, or backhanded jokes can erase what's written in cosmic ink. The joke is over, the tables are turning, and this time, they're not laughing. Let's go deeper. Number 3, they wanted blood, not truth, because your innocence was a mirror they couldn't stand to look at. The guilty never hate the wicked. They hate the innocent, because the innocent make their shame impossible to ignore. That's what this was. Not justice, not concern, not accountability. It was a hunt, a smear campaign dressed as righteousness, a public execution with no trial, just rage, jealousy, and projection. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a sacrifice. And when you stood in front of them, not perfect but pure-hearted, they saw something they couldn't destroy in themselves: integrity. So they chose destruction. They chose to tear you down, not because of your wrongs, but because you were a living, breathing indictment of theirs. You were their mirror, and what do cowards do with mirrors? They smash them. You weren't their threat because of your sins. You were their threat because you hadn't done what they did. You didn't scheme. You didn't fake it. You didn't sell your soul for applause. You walked in with honesty, and they walked out with pitchforks. Because the truth didn't fit their agenda, but your blood would. This wasn't about clarity. This was about control. They couldn't rewrite who they were, so they tried to rewrite who you were. They wanted to paint you guilty because if they could stain your image, they wouldn't have to confront the rot in their own. Think about history. Look at how the world treats those who carry light. Socrates was killed for questioning lies. Joan of Arc burned not for betrayal, but for faith. Malcolm X wasn't feared because he lied. He was feared because he told the truth too clearly. And you? You carried that same silent threat. You were clean in a room full of the filthy, and that made you dangerous. So they circled like vultures, hungry, but not for justice, for a fall, for the sound of your collapse, for the taste of your downfall. They smiled while bleeding you dry. They clapped when others joined in. They clung to each rumor like it was gospel. Why? Because the more people they convinced, the less guilty they felt. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a ritual. You were the offering. And here's the truth they didn't expect. The universe doesn't take kindly to the slaughter of the innocent. There's a reason ancient laws required 2 or more witnesses before a sentence could fall. But you were judged with no evidence, no facts, just feelings. And yet, you survived. That's what's killing them now. You didn't just survive, you're rising, and each step you take toward healing is a judgment against them, because their greatest fear isn't that the truth will be revealed. It's that you'll heal louder than they hurt you. So let them choke on their stories. Let them suffocate in their lies, because the more they try to repaint your truth, the more the cracks in their own image start to show. You were never the villain. You were the verdict. Let's keep going. Number 4, the universe was silent, not because it forgot you, but because it was collecting receipts. The silence of the divine is not absence. It's the sound of a courtroom filling with evidence. And oh, how they mistook that silence. They thought your quiet meant weakness. They thought the lack of thunder meant permission, that no fire fell from the sky, so they must be in the clear. They took the silence of the universe as a green light to keep slandering, mocking, and tearing you apart. But what they didn't realize was this: silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's surveillance. The universe wasn't ignoring what they did. It was recording. Every whispered lie, every screenshot, every twisted story told behind your back, every laugh at your expense, every eye roll when you weren't in the room, all of it catalogued, filed, stored. And now the case is closed, and justice is coming like a flood with receipts in hand and vengeance in its stride. They thought they were safe. They thought that because nothing happened yet, nothing ever would. But justice delayed is not justice denied. It's justice refined. While they were busy dragging your name through mud, the universe was tracking fingerprints on every knife in your back. While they laughed at your breakdowns, it was taking note of who poured gasoline on your soul and called it a candle. While you cried yourself to sleep, wondering, where is justice? It was being built, brick by brick. And now it's done. Now the silence is breaking, and the crash that follows is not mercy, it's reckoning. You didn't see it then, but every unanswered prayer, every moment you begged for a sign, every second you thought you were abandoned, you were being watched, not forsaken. The universe wanted the full story, the whole mess. It wanted to make sure not one guilty hand escaped the net. Let's be real, if justice had come too early, some of them would have slipped through. Some of them would have twisted it again, said you overreacted, said it was karma, said you brought it on yourself. But now, too much has been recorded. There's no room left for excuses, no space for manipulation. It's airtight, it's undeniable, and it's already in motion. The same mouths that slandered you will taste regret. The same hands that tried to destroy you will lose grip of everything they touched. Not because you wished it, but because universal law doesn't play fair. And fairness says this: when you sow betrayal, you don't get peace. When you lie on the pure, you don't get prosperity. When you mock the chosen, you invite exposure. You stood in the fire, asking, why won't it stop? Not knowing the flames weren't for your destruction, they were for your protection. You were being held there until every false witness had finished testifying against you, while the universe kept score. And now the gavel is falling, not from your hands, from higher ones, precise, sharp, undeniable. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to defend yourself. You were defended by silence. And now that silence is speaking louder than any scream ever could. This is what happens when innocence suffers and the guilty dance too long. The music stops, the spotlight shifts, and every receipt gets read out loud. Let's continue. Number 5. They thought you were on trial, but the whole time it was them standing before the court. The real test was never about how much you could take. It was about how low they would sink trying to break you. They thought they were the judges, thought they had the authority to weigh your worth, question your integrity, and dissect your pain like it was a courtroom drama with them behind the bench. But let's get this straight right now. You weren't the one being judged. They were. Every time they lied on you, heaven wasn't watching to see how much damage you'd take. It was watching how far they'd go. Every word they twisted, every fake tear they dropped, every time they pulled others into their deception. They were writing their own sentence. You weren't on trial. You were the trigger. You showed up and revealed everything they had hidden. You didn't expose them with your words. Your existence did it. And that's what enraged them, because when someone's heart is crooked, the presence of someone pure is offensive. You didn't attack them. You didn't smear them. You didn't throw dirt. You just stood there in truth, and that alone caused their masks to slip. Let's be real. Some people don't want peace. They want power. And when they saw they couldn't control you, couldn't label you, couldn't reduce you, they panicked. They turned their fear into a false trial. With you as the defendant and them as the jury. But here's what they forgot. The universe never co-signs injustice. It just lets people reveal who they really are before it hits them with the consequences. This wasn't a test of your character. This was an X-ray on theirs. And guess what? The scan came back corrupt. They failed. Not because they got angry, not because they were hurt, but because they chose cruelty over conversation, betrayal over boundaries, and ego over empathy. You were the mirror, and when they saw their own ugliness reflected in your strength, they tried to shatter it. But breaking you didn't cleanse them, it condemned them. Let this sink in. They put you on trial to distract from the fact that they were the guilty ones. They tried to play God with your reputation while the real judge sat in silence, collecting data, watching hearts, noting motives. You didn't need to fight back. The case wasn't about proving your worth. It was about documenting their fall. And now the verdict is being delivered, slowly, publicly, without apology. They're not just losing you, they're losing everything they built on lies. So don't carry their accusations anymore. That courtroom they dragged you into was never about your guilt. It was a trap, one they set for themselves. And the moment they chose to tear down what was sacred in you, they stamped their own judgment in ink that can't be erased. The trial is over. The judge never left. And justice has a long memory. Let's move forward. Number 6, they built their status off your scars, but now the spotlight's turning and it's burning them alive. They climbed high on ladders made from your broken bones, but the higher they went, the louder the truth echoed from below. Let's call it what it is. Exploitation. They didn't just hurt you, they harvested your pain. They used your name like a step stool, stood taller by putting their dirty feet on your story, and smiled for applause while you bled behind the scenes. Your suffering became their spotlight. They twisted the truth, weaponized your silence, and fed their reputation with whispers soaked in manipulation. They played the victim while you were actually the one gasping for air. You weren't the villain. You were the resource. And they drained you like a leech drinks blood. Let's be brutally honest. They didn't just want you to lose. They wanted to profit off your loss. They played noble in public and vicious in private. They got social currency from dragging your name through the dirt, and then dared to act righteous as the crowd clapped for their lies. That applause, temporary, that platform built on sand, that fame, borrowed time, because now the same audience they fooled is watching again, but this time they're watching the collapse. The truth always has a longer breath than the lie, and now it's catching up. You don't have to prove anything. You don't need to shout. The universe is pulling the curtain back, and when it does, the same mouths that once said, "Wow, look at them," will be whispering, "Wait, that's what they did." Their rise came at the cost of your character, but the law of balance says this: if you build on falsehood, you inherit destruction. And it's happening, slowly, elegantly, painfully. Their carefully crafted image, crumbling, their social mask, slipping, their fake favor, drying up like rain on a desert stone, because there's one thing they can't outrun: karma with a clipboard and perfect timing. Meanwhile, look at you. Still standing, still here, maybe scarred, maybe quieter, maybe more cautious, but you're rising. And here's the beautiful twist. Your restoration won't come in shadows. It's coming in front of the same crowd that watched you break. That's how justice works. The universe doesn't just balance the scales, it flips the whole table. Let them feel the weight of what they built. Let them sit in the echo of the applause they once stole. And let your name, once dragged, bruised and abused, be rebuilt in truth. Because what they used for clout is now their curse. And your pain, it's about to become your platform. Let's keep going. Number 7, the universe was never neutral. It just let them dig deep enough to bury themselves. The delay wasn't doubt, it was documentation. Make no mistake, this was never a debate. The universe was never confused, never unsure, never sitting back trying to decide who was right. It wasn't impartial. It wasn't in some divine dilemma about your worth. No, the silence you felt wasn't hesitation. It was strategy. They mistook it for weakness. They thought because no fire fell, no curse came, no consequence hit them immediately, that they were justified, that their smear campaigns and backroom betrayals were somehow okay. That karma must have approved. But the universe doesn't move on emotion. It moves on evidence, and every day they dug deeper into deception. Every time they opened their mouths to twist the narrative, every time they recruited others to hate you, they weren't winning. They were writing their own judgment. Heaven wasn't neutral, it was patient. Like a trap that needs the right tension before it snaps shut, like a sniper waiting for a clear shot, like a storm gathering heat before lightning strikes. Let this hit you deep. The universe let them go far, so far, not because it didn't care, but because it wanted to make the fall undeniable. No loopholes, no excuses, no denials, because when the scales tip, they don't just shift, they slam. You weren't forgotten. You were being defended quietly, completely, and permanently. And now the silence has turned to judgment. They kept talking, they kept mocking, they kept painting themselves as the hero in a story they built on lies. But now the lights are on and the story's being rewritten with receipts. The delay was divine, the silence was surgical, and now the consequence is inevitable, because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits and then hits all at once. And the universe, it wasn't sitting on a fence, it was sitting in court, taking notes, watching who showed up with truth and who came armed with manipulation, watching who stood alone in the fire and who cheered from the shadows. Now the files are open, the weight is shifting, the truth is rising, and the scales, they've tipped, not gently, violently. This isn't just a turning point, this is a reversal, a divine audit, a loud, clear no to every lie they ever told. So when they look around and start losing peace, losing credibility, losing access, don't be shocked. The universe was never undecided. It was just lining them up for the fall. Let's finish this. Number 8. They didn't attack who you were. They were trying to assassinate who you were about to become. When they tried to bury you, they weren't fighting the present. They were trying to kill the prophecy stitched into your bones. Let's be real, their war wasn't against your past. It wasn't even about your present. The real threat, the one that made them restless, petty, obsessed, was your future. They saw a glimpse. Maybe they couldn't name it. Maybe they didn't understand it. But they felt it, that pull around you, that weight you carried, that strange confidence, even when you were in pieces. And it scared them. Because deep down, they knew you were becoming something they couldn't fake, something they could never control. They were never attacking the broken you. They were trying to prevent the unstoppable version of you. So they came for your mind, your peace, your reputation. Not because of what you'd done, but because of what they feared you'd do next. They wanted to abort your ascension before it got momentum, before you realized who you really are. Because your rise meant their lies wouldn't hold. Your glow made their manipulation obvious. Your healing made their abuse undeniable. And your voice, it was dangerous. Because if you ever used it fully, it would burn down the entire illusion they built. So they tried to shut you up, tear you down, distract you, humiliate you, break you, not because you were weak, but because you were growing stronger. Every scar you carried was a receipt of endurance, and the more they fought you, the more your roots dug deeper. Here's the divine irony. What they used to kill your future actually built it. They gave you fire, and it became fuel. They threw dirt, and it became foundation. They stabbed you, and every wound taught you how to fight with wisdom, not emotion. You don't become the chosen without a battlefield, and what they didn't realize was their attacks were building your platform. Their betrayal was building your blueprint. Every lie they told gave your truth more contrast. Every trap they set exposed their character. Every storm they dragged you into trained you for the next level. The very energy they used to destroy you became the proof that you were chosen for more. And now, they're panicking. Because you didn't just survive, you transformed. You became the version of yourself they feared most. Awakened, focused, healed, and dangerous in truth. They fought the caterpillar, but now they're staring at the butterfly with no way to explain how it still took flight. Let that sit. They weren't fighting your past mistakes. They were fighting your potential. They weren't trying to correct you. They were trying to contain you, and they failed. Because what's chosen can't be cancelled. You are not their victim. You're the threat they tried to silence and failed. Keep rising. Number 9, they mistook mercy for weakness, but restraint is not surrender, it's a warning. The calm before the storm isn't peace, it's patience on a ticking clock. They thought your silence was fear. They thought your forgiveness was fragility. They looked at your restraint, your decision to rise above, your refusal to clap back, and they laughed. They called you weak, passive, powerless. But here's the truth they were too arrogant to grasp. You weren't silent because you couldn't destroy them. You were silent because you chose not to. That's the kind of strength that terrifies cowards. They took your mercy and saw a window of opportunity, so they climbed through it with lies, slander, betrayal, and manipulation. They confused your grace with submission. They thought because you didn't retaliate, you had no retaliation to offer. But what they never realized is, you had the power. You just had discipline. You didn't expose them when you could have. You didn't respond with venom when they begged for it. You didn't strike, not because you lacked the ability, but because you had the maturity to let the universe handle what your hands could have wrecked. And now, mercy has lifted. The line has been crossed too many times. The warnings have echoed too long. And what's coming isn't confusion. It's correction, swift, precise, final, because there's a limit. Even mercy has boundaries, and they ran past them full speed, smiling, mocking, daring judgment to show up. Well, now it has, and it's not coming quietly. Think of the greatest downfalls in history. The mighty who thought their cruelty was invincible until the ground gave way beneath their feet. The enemies of truth who confused delay with denial. The betrayers who laughed too early. That's exactly what's happening now. They were warned, not by threats, by mercy. You gave them time to stop. You gave them silence to rethink. You gave them grace as a gift. They returned it with mockery. They turned your mercy into material for jokes, used your patience like a stage to rehearse their next lie, and now they're about to learn something brutal. Mercy may be divine, but justice is surgical. The same silence they thought was weakness is now a sword, and it's swinging, not from your hand, from higher hands, and it doesn't miss. What comes next won't be drama. It'll be clarity, a great revealing of who they are, of what they did, of the pain they caused. No fog, no spin, no denials. The universe doesn't erase mercy, it recalls it when it's abused. So when you see them unravel, when you hear them panicking, when the same people who mocked your silence start begging for it, don't be surprised. They weren't ready for the storm they mocked into existence. You were never weak, you were measured. And now the scale is tipping, the sword is falling, and mercy is no longer on the table. Let's bring it home. Number 10. Your silence wasn't defeat. It was a legal strategy backed by heaven itself. Every word you didn't speak became a brick in the courtroom of justice, and now the verdict is speaking louder than revenge ever could. They thought you lost. They looked at your silence and assumed you had nothing left. No fight, no strength, no defense. They thought the absence of your reaction was proof they'd won. But you weren't silent because you were powerless. You were silent because you were smart, strategic, tuned in to something far bigger than the noise they kept throwing at you. You knew where the real court was, and it wasn't in gossip circles, text threads, or social media pity parties. It was in the unseen, in the spiritual, in the cosmic courtroom where truth needs no filter and justice needs no jury. You could have fought back. You could have aired everything. You could have burned their names like they tried to burn yours. But you didn't, not because you were too soft, but because you knew the universe doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs evidence. And your silence became the evidence. Every lie they told, logged, every fake tear they cried to convince others, documented. Every time you bit your tongue and chose peace instead of pettiness, that was another mark in your favor. You were building a case without ever stepping into the courtroom. The universe was listening, watching, recording, and while they were busy trying to win an audience, you were gaining favor in places they couldn't see. And now they can't stop what's coming, because now that file is full, complete. The gavel is being lifted, and justice isn't just an idea anymore. It's an active force heading straight in their direction. They thought your silence meant you had no story, but the truth is, your silence was the story, and now the universe is telling it for you. Let that settle. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to convince anyone. You knew something they didn't, that revenge is noisy and short-lived, but vindication is eternal. And now you're being vindicated, not just quietly but publicly, not just spiritually but visibly. They're feeling it. You can see it, the shift, the confusion, the panic setting in, because they don't understand how you're still rising when they buried you so deep. They don't realize that while they were playing chess in the dirt, you were letting the universe write your final move in gold. Silence is not surrender when you're chosen. It's a legal strategy, and the verdict is in. You won, without lifting a weapon, without losing your dignity, without betraying your character. Now they have to sit in the truth you never had to scream, and the ruling, final, unshakable, divine. Let's close the case. Number 11. They tried to write you out, but the pen was never in their hands. You can't erase what the universe engraved in purpose. You can delete the page, but destiny rewrites the book. They didn't just try to hurt you, they tried to delete you. Not physically, no, spiritually, emotionally, publicly. They rewrote stories where you were the villain. They cut you out of the very narrative you helped build. They told lies in your absence, reshaped memories, twisted facts, and retold events like you never mattered, like you were never there. But here's the truth they never saw coming. You don't need their story. The universe already had one written, and your name is not in pencil. It's carved in gold. Let this hit deep. They pretended you didn't help, didn't carry weight, didn't sacrifice, didn't show up. They twisted your name into something shameful, something forgettable, and the crowd, they believed it for a while, because lies move fast when people are addicted to drama. But now the narrative is collapsing, because the one thing they could never steal was truth. And truth has a strange way of surviving the fire. It shows up in the ashes, clean, untouchable, and undeniable. You see, they thought they were the authors, that they controlled the story, that their version of events would last longer than your silence. But the story was never theirs. They were just characters. And now that the universe is turning the page, their pens have run out of ink. You were never erased. You were hidden for your protection. Because the next part of your story couldn't be co-written with liars. The next chapter required truth-tellers, real ones, ones who weren't threatened by your light. They tried to bury your legacy in gossip, to black out your name like it was a typo, but all they did was delay your spotlight, and now it's hitting harder than ever. The same people who left you out are now watching you stand in places they swore you'd never reach. They're watching your name echo in rooms they tried to lock you out of, watching your voice rise louder than the lies ever did. Because the universe never forgets what man tries to erase. Think of Joseph. His brothers threw him in a pit and acted like he never existed. But when famine hit and judgment arrived, they had to bow in front of the very one they erased. Not because he sought revenge, but because purpose doesn't lose just because people lie. Your name is being restored, not by man, but by the same force that carried you through the betrayal. And when that restoration hits, it won't be in secret. It will be in front of every single person who tried to strike you from the story. Your name won't just be remembered. It'll be honored. It'll be undeniable. It'll be written in places they can't reach and spoken in circles they'll never access. So let them watch. Let them wonder how the same person they erased is now the one rising. They tried to write you out, but the universe just turned the pen around. Now it's your chapter. Let's finish it strong. And now we've come full circle. The silence has spoken, the verdict has dropped, and the stage is being flipped. But it doesn't end in the shadows. Not this time, because what was done to you publicly cannot be repaired privately. The same mouths that slandered you, that questioned your worth, that mocked your name in front of crowds, they don't get to whisper sorry behind closed doors and call it even. The universe isn't accepting backstage apologies for front-stage betrayal. Restitution must match the volume of the violation. If they dragged your name through dirt in public, they will have to lift it up in the same public square, or feel the full weight of judgment that doesn't need your permission to fall. This isn't about revenge. It's about balance, about accountability, about the restoration of what was stolen from your life, your legacy, and your dignity. And if they don't, then they'll watch your elevation happen anyway, without them, around them, and in front of them, while the very lies they told become their own chains. This is your moment. And the universe, it's making sure every eye that watched you fall will now watch you rise. If this truth sets something on fire in your soul, pay it forward. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you're ready for your public restoration. And don't keep this message to yourself. Share it, spread it. Let the other chosen ones know they're not forgotten and their vindication is already in motion. They tried to silence your truth. Now watch the universe make them echo it for you. This is your justice. Walk in it.